Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well in this pandemic. So please remember to wash your hands, wear your masks and keep away from others. Today we'll continue dealing with Unit 3, Creative Inventive Minds, Lesson 6, The Brain Drain, a lesson prepared and presented by me, Mrs. Sanab al-Mustafa, and under the supervision of the ELT inspector, Mr. Rashid Kharoubi. So in this lesson, we are going to first talk about brain drain and the terms related to it, then get information from a video and a graph, interpret data and figures, and finally develop notes into coherent sentences. Let me start by asking you a question. Why do people immigrate? Certainly, you know somebody who immigrated. But before we get to the answer, I want you to make the difference between three confusing verbs, which are to migrate, to emigrate, and to immigrate. Well, to migrate means to move to another geographical area commonly used for periodical mass movement, especially for animals. Example, flocks of birds migrate to North Africa, while to emigrate means to leave one's native country to settle in a foreign one. Example, his family emigrated to the United States during World War II. And finally, to immigrate means to become a permanent resident into a foreign country. In our country, most immigrants have the right to vote. Now let's move and know about the noun and person noun conversions of these three verbs. So the noun from to migrate is migration, while the person noun is a migrant. To emigrate, the noun is emigration and the person noun is an immigrant. And finally, the immigration is the noun from the verb immigrate, and an immigrant is the person noun. Let's go back to our question. And of course, think of people who immigrated and why. One of the reasons that push people to immigrate could be to pursue one's studies or seek better life conditions, look for better job opportunities. Some people would flee political instability or escape religious persecution in search for freedom. Some others would run away from wars, revolutions, disasters. They are often called refugees. Now, let's observe the following picture and try to guess what is this. Of course, it's a brain. Now here, it seems to be talented and skilled. Now, it seems to be leaving one's country. And then if you have a look at his eyes, he appears to be fed up and dissatisfied. Now here we may wonder why. Maybe because of the bad working conditions, low salary, or of lack of opportunities. The next picture would give us further explanations. So here you can observe a magnet representing developed countries. And you see that this magnet is so powerful that it attracts many skilled and intelligent people. Why? Maybe because they're offering comfortable life, better opportunities, higher salaries, research facilities, or the ability to send money back. We call this movement of intelligent people brain drain. And here is a short or a brief definition to brain drain. It is the emigration of trained and skilled individuals from developing countries to developed countries. Now, I want you to watch the following video for further understanding of the phenomenon and try to guess the terms related to it. Now, watch the video.
All right, many qualified professionals are moving away from their home country. Many of them go study abroad, others get job offers, and some will live overseas for a long period of time. Specialists call this a brain drain, meaning the highly qualified are kind of leaving the country and the economy at home behind. But what can we do to support our country even if we're abroad? We can transform a brain drain into a brain gain. And that is possible even without moving back home. Take India, for example. A couple of years ago, many IT specialists left the country. But by staying in touch with their IT friends back home, they actually brought in loads of new business opportunities. And now the economy is doing great. That is a brain gain. Thanks to social media and the latest technology, you can stay in touch and use your global network. So, helping directly or exchanging the latest research and know-how, as well as creating new business opportunities for small businesses to go abroad, is easier than ever. As you see, there are many ways to contribute. By working together, we can still make a difference back home, no matter where we are.
So among the terms you might have noticed in the video are highly qualified professionals, home countries, poor developing countries, host countries or rich developed countries, and brain gain. Now, let's identify the relationship between these four terms. As you see here, the highly qualified professionals leave their home countries to live in host and rich countries. And this movement is a brain gain for the rich and developed countries and a brain drain for home countries. Now, I'm going to refer back to three important terms mentioned in your school textbook, which are brain drain, brain gain, and reverse brain drain. Now, the first task here is going to give us further explanation and definition of the term brain drain. Here you can refer back to page 162. The task, you're going to fill in the following text with words from the box. Now think a moment and we'll correct. Okay then, now as you see, brain drain is the departure or mass migration of highly, you see here, you can notice a hyphen. You understand that we are going to deal with a compound adjective composed of an adverb, and of course, we are describing the noun people. So what we need here, or what is missing here, is an adjective describing people, and of course, we are meaning here the highly skilled people, such as scientists, engineers, doctors, physicians, and other. Here, mind the parallel structure, because before and we have different plural nouns. So normally and obviously, we are going to fill in with a plural noun, which is professionals. Moving from there, what type of home countries? Describing the home countries here, we need an adjective. Poor home countries, to other, again, describing rich countries which are advanced, in search of a brighter future. These skilled people are lost to other countries. How? Through brain drain. The second task will provide us with a definition to brain gain. So, brain gain is the opposite. Brain drain, it is a situation where many trained and talented individuals seek entrance into a country. This is common in developed countries where people come from many nations for higher studies but never go back. This migration can be brain gain for both developed and developing countries. Now, let's classify the following statements in the following table. The first statement is, the money immigrants send back home helps in reducing poverty in their home countries. Second statement, highly qualified people contribute to making developed countries more prosperous. Here is the table, benefits of brain drain on or for developed countries and for developing countries. Think a moment. Okay then, I'm quite sure you've got the right answer. So, highly qualified people contribute to making developed countries more prosperous, and the money immigrants send back home helps in reducing poverty in their home countries. Another positive aspect to brain drain is the so-called reverse brain drain. And again, this is referred to in your textbooks, page 164. Now, brain drain happens when talents emigrate to developed countries, then come back to their home countries. Why? Because their countries need their skills, so they bring their expertise, talents, and hopes so that their countries profit from them. How? When given key positions, talents contribute to the economic recovery of their home countries. As you see here, this is another positive aspect of brain drain. Now, while talking about brain drain, we shouldn't forget about the impulses or incentives pushing skilled people away from home, known as push factors, and the circumstances encouraging these professionals to come and live in developed countries. Now, I want you to build on what we have seen as comments on the first and second pictures on the previous tasks to try to guess what are the push factors. Let's answer the question. What pushes skilled people to emigrate? Well, miserable and unsatisfactory conditions are among these push factors. Another one is unemployment and low salaries, which means you work a lot and you get too little money. The lack of satisfactory working conditions and the lack of research opportunities for skilled and talented people. Now, let's move on to the pull factors. Now, what do host countries offer? Well, these countries offer talented people a better quality of life for them, the talents themselves, and for their families. Again, better economic prospects, which means that they are going to get higher wages, more job opportunities, better research facilities, and finally, opportunities for open horizons. So far, we have dealt with the positive effect of brain drain on both developed and developing countries. Now, we're going to see the other side of the coin. That is, we're going to see the bad effect of brain drain on poor countries. So, poor countries are losing thousands of the highly qualified workers for the benefits of already rich countries, which means that they are losing all of their inner strength due to scarcity of skilled workforce. This would lead to the unavailability of doctors and engineers, and of course, this would have a negative impact upon not only the local technological development, but also the advancement of national technologies and intelligences. Thus, widening the gap between developed and developing countries. Now here we have to wonder about how can we reduce brain drain? Think of the solutions. Well, to reduce brain drain is everyone's responsibility, which means starting from the brains themselves, developing or governments in developing countries, and of course the rich countries. Let's start with the brain's responsibilities. Tenants have the right to look for better opportunities abroad, but they should assume their responsibilities towards their nations and contribute to the progress of education and economy at home. While governments in developing countries should provide the highly skilled intellectuals with the necessary tools of scientific research and give them extra privileges such as high salaries and key positions to encourage them to stay. And finally, rich countries should help developing countries by providing the necessary tools and expertise to boost the educational and economic level. They should stop seducing and robbing the brains from poor countries. Now, my question is Tunisia a subject to brain drain or brain gain? Let's see the answer after focusing on the following figures. A recent study has shown that 95,000 Tunisians have left the country from 2011 to 2017, while more than 1,800 university professors have left the country over the past 3 years. 10,000 engineers have left during the same period, and the number of doctors uprooting to France, Germany, or Gulf countries each year has doubled. So, Tunisia is the second most affected Arab country by the brain drain after Syria. Well, the answer to my question is that Tunisia is a subject to a massive brain drain. And as you see here, while focusing on the number of doctors, we see that the sector that is most affected by brain drain in Tunisia is the medical sector. This will be explained in the following testimonials. The first one is the one to Dr. Abderrahman Hdili, the president of the Tunisian Forum for Economic and Social Rights. He told the Arab Weekly that the difficult economic situation, the low salaries and poor working conditions are behind the doctors' emigration from the country. He suggests that this emigration could be avoided by a simple rehabilitation of the sector, the improvement of the health system, and the increase of the capacity of medical schools in our country. So as you see here, Dr. Abderrahman diagnosed the situation, he explained it, what are the causes behind brain drain in Tunisia, especially for doctors. We find that the difficult economic situations, the low salaries, and the poor working conditions are the main causes of the massive brain drain of doctors. And then he suggested that this could be reduced by improving the health system and increasing the capacity of medical schools in our country. Now let's move on to the second testimonial. Dr. Shturu, the president of the Public Tunisian Union of Private Doctors, attributes the growing phenomenon to the fact that Tunisia's public health sector does not have the capability to recruit doctors, and salaries are not in line with international standards. Shturu stressed the need to reform the country's health system and believes that the point of reform should start with giving value to a real partnership between the public and private sectors. Again, here, Dr. Sturo analyzes the situation of brain drain in Tunisia and again provides convenient solutions. Have a look at this graph. This graph corroborates what have been said before. It shows the percentage of highly educated Tunisian migrants in age group between 25 and 34 years and the various destination countries in 2011. Now, graphs, or interpreting a graph, is one of the guided writing tasks which needs to be focused on. Now, let's have a look at the different types of graphs. The pie graph, that's the first one. Table graph, line graph, and finally the bar graph. Now, as you see here, these graphs might be different in shapes, in forms, but they all give statistics and all interpreted the same way. And in order to interpret graphs, you should follow the following tips. How to interpret a graph? First, you have to identify the type of the graph, whether it is a pie, a line, a table, or a bar graph. Second, you state where the graph is taken from. You state the source, of course, if given. Then, state what the graph is about, describe the main information, which means you're going to make comparisons and or contrast to report the main features. Here, you should be careful not to give your opinion. You just write what you see and what it means. You can use some keywords and expressions such as the graph illustrates, the graph shows. At first glance, it is crystal clear that, to begin with the first point, the highest percentage and the lowest percentage, other points worth mentioning, and you can end up by finally to sum up after considering. Let's have a look to the graph interpretation. So, the highlighted words are the words you have to pay attention to because you're going to use it in your own interpretations. This given bar chart is taken from the OECD. It illustrates the percentages of the highly educated Tunisian migrants in age group between 25 and 33 years and the 7 various destination countries in 2011. At first glance, we can notice that the US and Canada have the highest percentage of Tunisian migrants, while Italy has the lowest percentage of migrants of these highly professionals. Meanwhile, the percentage of Tunisian talented migrants flocking to France, Belgium, and Sweden varies from 38% in Belgium to 34% in France to 32% in Sweden. So as you see here, it's a very simple task. You can use easy sentences, simple sentences, and it's okay. Let's move. Let's have a look at some language focus. So that and so that. Here you're going to study the following sentences and guess the differences between the underlined parts. Of course, sentence 1, developed and developing nations improve their cooperation on the issue so that developing countries are not hurt by brain drain. Second sentence, living conditions in Africa are so miserable that professionals resort to migrating to developed countries. Now, try to guess the difference between the two underlined expressions. Now, as you see here, we have to identify the relationship between the two different parts of the sentence. We can ask a question. Why do developed and developing nations improve their cooperation? Why here? So the answer would be so that or in order to. Here we are focusing on the goal or the purpose, so that developing nations or countries are not hurt by brain drain. So here, so that expresses purpose or goal. Now let's move on to the second sentence. The question is living conditions. We talk about why do professionals resort to migrate and the reason. Again, we ask the question the same way, why, but here we have to refer back to the meaning of purpose. Let's see the difference here. So why do professionals resort to migrate to developed countries? The answer, because of the living conditions in Africa. So here we have a cause-effect relationship. The living conditions are so miserable, here is the cause, that professionals resort to migrate into developed countries is the effect. So that's the rule. So plus adjective plus that means cause-effect relationship. Now let's move on to further explanation. Let's have a look at this example. Talented people emigrate so that they get higher salaries and income. Now, as you see here, so that is followed by a clause of verbs, and here subject plus verb. Now, if we want to say the sentence in a different way, we'll say, talented people emigrate in order to or so as to get higher salary and income. Now, have a look here. In order to is followed by a bare infinitive. So we can use so that, in order to, so as to express goal or purpose, but we have to pay attention to what follows. So after so that, we have a subject verb. After in order to or so as to, we have a bare infinitive. Now, let's move on to the second sentence. Many skilled workers are so dissatisfied that they are leaving their home countries. Here, the cause is that many skilled workers are dissatisfied, and of course, the result, they are leaving their home countries. Again, if you want to say the sentence in a different way, we can say that many skilled workers are leaving their home countries because they are dissatisfied. And here we are given the cause-effect relationship. Let's move on to practice. You're going to combine the following sentences using either so that or so adjective that. Let's start with the first sentence. She left him a message. She wanted him to call her. Now here, focus on the relationship between the two parts of the sentence. Good. I'm quite sure you got the right answer. So, she left him a message so that he calls her. So why did she leave him a message? She left him the message to call her. Second sentence. She was furious. She started shouting. Again, the answer is she was so furious that she started shouting. Here we have the meaning of cause-effect relationship. The final sentence is, the coffee was hot, we couldn't drink it. And the answer, the coffee was so hot that we couldn't drink it. Again, so hot is the cause, we couldn't drink it is the result. Now, before we move to the productive part of our lesson, I want to wrap up with you what we have already learned. So first of all, we tried to explain the meaning of brain drain as a phenomenon. We have covered the causes, consequences, and some solutions. We dealt with some push and pull factors, and now it's time to practice. So we can use some of the information we have already mentioned before in this writing task. So this writing task is a guided one. You're going to, in step 1, develop the following notes to get coherent sentences about brain drain. So here you have 4 sentences which you're going to develop. But let me give you some tips on how to develop notes. So you have to follow special tips to be able to write or to form correct sentences. The first thing is you're going to read the notes carefully more than once to figure out what the topic is and what the notes are about. Second tip, you use all the notes you have. Third, do not add any new information. Just stick to what you have in the instructions. Don't change the order of words. This should have been said before. The first thing that you should pay attention to is the order of words. That is, you are not going to unscramble the words, you are going to develop them. While developing them, of course, you are going to add the necessary components, which could be articles, prepositions, linkers, pronouns, or you can put the words in the right tense or form. You can also add auxiliaries, such as to be, to have, and of course, you can add modals, depending on the context, can, should, must, whether it is ability, advice, obligation, and finally, don't forget punctuation and capitalization. Now, let's move on to the correction. So, the first statement, brain drain, the migration, highly skilled people, developing countries, developed countries. Here, you are supposed to add things in each slash. Brain drain is the migration of highly skilled people from developing countries to developed countries. So as you see here, we added the auxiliary be, present tense, and 3 prepositions. Let's move to the next sentence. We have search, better opportunities, high wages. The answer, in search for or in search of, we can use both prepositions, better opportunities and higher wages. And as you see here, we added prepositions and a linker of addition, and we kept parallel structure of comparative forms. Now we move to the third. Poor countries lose thousands of highly educated workers, benefit rich countries. The answer, poor countries are losing thousands of their highly talented workers for the benefit of rich countries. And here we put in the right tense, present progressive. We used a possessive adjective and 2 prepositions. The final sentence, it widened the gap, developing countries, and the answer, it widens the gap between developed and developing countries. Now, let's move on to the second step of our task. You are going to combine these sentences to make a coherent paragraph. Now, let me show you the skeleton of a paragraph. How do we write a paragraph? These are some tips. The first one, you should write a topic sentence, supporting it with details, and of course you end up by a concluding sentence. You can also use linkers, whether of linkers of addition, such as in addition, besides, moreover, furthermore, and many others. Linkers of emphasis, indeed, in fact, in reality, generally. Of contrast, however, nevertheless, although, yet. And linkers of sequence, such as firstly, secondly, finally, next. Now, let's go back to our paragraph. Brain drain is the migration of highly skilled people from developing countries to developed countries in search for better opportunities and wages. Consequently, poor countries are losing thousands of their highly talented workers for the benefit of rich countries, thus widening the gap between developed and developing countries. As you see here, we combine the sentences using two linkers, one of consequence, consequently, then again another one for consequence, thus. So here the use of linkers is not a must, but it can help us identify or link the sentences together.